I'm Eleanor Vance, 58 years old, and for the past 3 decades, Apex Solutions has been more than just a workplace, it's been my second home. My retirement party, a grand affair meticulously planned by my colleagues, was just a week away. 30 years of loyalty, dedication, and countless late nights were about to culminate in a well-deserved farewell. I started at Apex as a junior administrative assistant, fresh out of college, eager to prove myself. Over the years, I climbed the ranks, adapting to new technologies and mentoring countless young professionals. I saw the company grow from a small local firm to a major player in the tech services industry, always believing in its core values. The past few months, however, had felt different. A new CEO, Mr. Harrison Thorne, had taken the helm, bringing with him a wave of modernization and efficiency initiatives. There was a palpable shift in the office culture, a subtle chill that replaced the warmth I had known for so long. Whispers of layoffs and restructuring had circulated, but I always dismissed them. After all, I was a cornerstone, a living archive of Apex's history, and my departure was already set. My going-away party was even on the company calendar, a testament to my long service. I had already picked out my outfit for the party, a beautiful navy dress I'd saved for the occasion. My colleagues, bless their hearts, had been secretly planning a roast, filled with anecdotes from my long career. I could almost hear the laughter and feel the warmth of their appreciation. My desk was slowly being cleared, sentimental items packed into boxes. Each framed photo, each old memo, told a story of my journey within those walls. It was a bittersweet process, but mostly sweet, anticipating the freedom of retirement. I had envisioned my last week as a leisurely handover, sharing institutional knowledge, and saying my goodbyes. I planned to offer advice to the younger generation, passing on the torch with grace and wisdom. It was supposed to be a celebration of a life well lived within Apex. The morning started like any other, with a cup of coffee and a quick chat with Sarah, my mentee, about her upcoming project. The sun streamed through the large office windows, illuminating the bustling open-plan workspace. Everything felt normal, predictable, and safe. Then, an email popped up. Meeting with Mr. Thorne, 10 a.m. It was unusual for the CEO to request a direct meeting with me, especially with my retirement so close. A slight unease settled in my stomach, but I quickly brushed it aside as a formality. Perhaps he wanted to personally thank me for my years of service, or discuss some final transition details. I straightened my blouse, took a deep breath, and walked towards the executive floor, the familiar carpet feeling a little less soft under my feet. The executive suite was starker now, minimalist and cold, reflecting the new leadership's aesthetic. The vibrant art pieces that once adorned the walls had been replaced by abstract, muted tones. It felt less like a place of innovation and more like a corporate fortress. Mr. Thorne's assistant, a young woman named Chloe, greeted me with a polite but distant smile. She led me into his spacious office, where he sat behind a gleaming glass desk, his expression unreadable. The air in the room was heavy, almost suffocating. He gestured to the chair opposite him, not offering a handshake. His eyes, sharp and analytical, seemed to bore right through me. I felt a sudden, inexplicable chill despite the warmth of the room. This was not the celebratory meeting I had imagined. He began by talking about new directions and streamlining operations, corporate jargon that had become increasingly common. My mind raced, trying to understand why this conversation was happening now, just days before my planned departure. I braced myself for what felt like an inevitable, unpleasant revelation. Mr. Thorne cleared his throat, his gaze unwavering. "Eleanor," he began, his voice devoid of warmth, "we've made a difficult decision regarding your position." My heart sank, a cold dread spreading through my chest. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. He continued, "Effective immediately, your employment with Apex Solutions is terminated." The sentence hit me like a physical blow. Terminated? A week before my retirement party? 30 years of my life, reduced to a cold, clinical statement. I struggled to process his words, my mind reeling. "But my retirement party is next week," I stammered, the absurdity of the situation almost comical. "I've been here for 3 decades. My colleagues have planned everything." He offered a dismissive wave of his hand. "We understand the timing is unfortunate, but these decisions are made for the long-term health of the company. We'll provide you with a severance package, of course. The package felt like a paltry consolation prize for a lifetime of dedication. Long-term health, I echoed, my voice rising slightly. What about the health of your employees? What about loyalty? What about the values this company was built on? My question seemed to bounce off his impassive demeanor. He simply reiterated, your services are no longer required. We've decided to move in a different direction, one that requires a more agile workforce. Agile. It was a word I'd heard often lately, usually implying younger, cheaper, and less experienced. I felt a surge of anger, quickly followed by a wave of profound sadness. 30 years. I had given my youth, my energy, my expertise to this company. I had sacrificed personal time, celebrated successes, and mourned losses within these very walls. So my going-away party? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Is that cancelled too? He nodded curtly. Yes, we'll inform your team. It's best to keep these transitions swift and clean. Swift and clean for them, perhaps, but a brutal, public humiliation for me. My mind flashed back to all the times I had gone above and beyond, staying late to finish a project, coming in on weekends, mentoring new hires. I had always believed that hard work and loyalty would be rewarded, or at the very least respected. The silence in the room was deafening, punctuated only by the hum of the air conditioning. I looked at Mr. Thorne, seeing not a leader, but a symbol of corporate indifference, a man who viewed people as mere cogs in a machine. He slid a document across the desk, a termination letter detailing the severance terms. It felt like a final insult, a cold piece of paper replacing the warm send-off I had anticipated. My hands trembled slightly as I picked it up. You'll be escorted out by security, he stated, his voice flat. We've already packed your personal belongings. They'll be sent to your home address. The thought of being walked out like a criminal after 3 decades was unbearable. My eyes welled up, but I refused to let the tears fall. Not in front of him. Not in this cold, sterile office. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. I would leave with what little dignity I had left. I stood up, pushing the chair back with a soft scrape. You're making a mistake, Mr. Thorne, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the turmoil within. A big mistake. Not just with me, but with what you're doing to this company. He merely watched me, his expression unchanged. I turned and walked out, leaving behind 3 decades of my life, a lifetime of memories, and a future that had just been abruptly and brutally erased. Walking through the office after that meeting felt like moving through a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. Every face I passed, every cubicle, every familiar sound, suddenly seemed alien, imbued with a sense of betrayal. My colleagues looked at me with pity and confusion. The news spread like wildfire. Whispers followed me down the hallways, a mixture of shock and disbelief. Eleanor, fired? It can't be true. But it was true, and the reality of it settled in my gut like a heavy stone. As I was escorted out by a stern-faced security guard, I saw Sarah, my mentee, standing by her desk, her eyes wide with unshed tears. She gave me a small, helpless wave, and I managed a weak smile in return. It was a moment of shared grief. Sitting in my car in the parking lot, the weight of the past 3 decades crashed down on me. It wasn't just about my job. It was about the systemic inequality I had witnessed throughout my career, often dismissed or ignored. I remember the countless times I had seen younger, less experienced male colleagues promoted over highly qualified women. The subtle comments about fitting in, or leadership potential, that always seemed to favor a certain demographic. There were the hushed conversations about salary disparities, where women and minorities consistently earned less for the same work. I had always hoped that with time, things would change, that the company would truly live up to its proclaimed values of diversity. I recall the time a brilliant black engineer was passed over for a team lead position, despite his exceptional performance, because he was deemed not a cultural fit. He left Apex a few months later, and his talent was a significant loss to the company. Then there was the unspoken expectation for women to be less emotional or more assertive to be taken seriously, a double standard that men rarely faced. It was a constant tightrope walk, trying to navigate these unwritten rules. I had seen colleagues, particularly those nearing retirement age, subtly sidelined, their projects given to younger employees, their expertise slowly devalued. It was a quiet form of ageism, a slow erosion of their contributions. My own experience, being fired just before retirement, felt like the ultimate manifestation of this pattern. It wasn't just about me. It was about a deeply ingrained culture that prioritized profit and a certain look over loyalty, experience, and genuine talent. The agile workforce Mr. Thorne spoke of wasn't just about efficiency. It was about shedding those who didn't fit a narrow, often discriminatory mold. It was about creating a workforce that was easier to control, cheaper to employ, and less likely to challenge the status quo. I thought of the countless hours I had spent training new hires, sharing my knowledge, building relationships. All of that, seemingly, meant nothing in the face of a new leader's agenda. My history with Apex was erased with a single, cold sentence. The sting of personal betrayal mingled with a broader sense of injustice. This wasn't just my story. It was a story many others at Apex and in similar companies had likely experienced or would experience. My dismissal was a symptom of a larger illness. I knew I couldn't just walk away and let this stand. Not after everything. Not after seeing so many others quietly suffer. This wasn't just about my severance package. It was about standing up for what was right. A quiet resolve began to form within me. The tears I had held back in Mr. Thorne's office now felt like fuel. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a fight not just for myself, but for every individual who had been underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed. The news of my dismissal spread beyond Apex Solutions, reaching the wider community. My phone buzzed constantly with calls and messages from former colleagues, friends, and even some local journalists who had heard the story. The outrage was palpable. Many shared their own stories of similar injustices, of being laid off without cause, or experiencing subtle discrimination. It quickly became clear that my situation was not an isolated incident but part of a larger, disturbing pattern at Apex. Sarah, my mentee, was one of the first to reach out, her voice trembling with anger and sadness. "Eleanor, this is so wrong," she said. "Everyone is talking about it. People are furious." Her words were a balm to my wounded spirit. She told me about the mood in the office, how morale had plummeted, and how many employees felt insecure about their own futures. Mr. Thorne's actions had created a climate of fear, but also, surprisingly, a growing sense of unity among the staff. Other long-term employees, particularly women and minorities, contacted me, expressing their solidarity. They recounted instances where they felt undervalued, their contributions minimized, or their career paths stifled by invisible barriers. A former colleague, Mark, who had been with Apex for 25 years before taking early retirement, called to share his own frustrations. He had witnessed the slow erosion of employee benefits and the increasing focus on short-term profits over long-term human capital. "Eleanor, you're not alone in this," he insisted. "This new management is systematically dismantling everything that made Apex a good place to work. They see us as liabilities, not assets." His words resonated deeply with my own feelings. The local newspaper picked up the story, highlighting my 3 decades of service and the abrupt, seemingly callous nature of my dismissal. The article questioned Apex's corporate responsibility and its treatment of long-standing employees. This public attention amplified the discontent within the company. Employees, emboldened by the media coverage, started to speak more openly about their grievances. The fear that had initially paralyzed them began to give way to a collective anger. Online forums and social media groups dedicated to Apex employees, both current and former, became hubs for discussion. People shared anecdotes, expressed solidarity, and debated what action, if any, could be taken against the company. A few brave individuals, including Sarah, began to organize informal meetings outside of work hours. They wanted to understand their rights, explore legal options, and discuss ways to challenge Mr. Thorne's leadership. I was invited to one of these meetings, held discreetly at a local community center. The room was packed with current and former Apex employees, a diverse group united by a shared sense of injustice. Their faces reflected a mixture of anger, hope, and determination. As I listened to their stories, I realized the full extent of the problem. It wasn't just about my dismissal. It was about a pattern of discrimination, ageism, and a disregard for the human element of the workforce. Someone suggested a public protest, a visible demonstration of their collective discontent. The idea, initially met with hesitation, slowly gained traction. It was a bold step, but many felt it was necessary to make their voices heard. The seeds of discontent had been sown, and now they were beginning to sprout. My individual pain was transforming into a collective resolve, a powerful current building beneath the surface of Apex Solutions. The fight was just beginning. The suggestion of a protest, once a tentative whisper, quickly became the focal point of our discussions. It was a daunting prospect, fraught with risks, but the feeling of injustice was too strong to ignore. We knew we had to act. Organizing a labor protest in a middle-class suburb, especially against a prominent tech services company like Apex, presented unique challenges. Many employees feared retaliation, worried about their careers, and were unaccustomed to such direct action. However, the stories shared at our meetings, the collective anger at Mr. Thorne's policies, and the blatant disregard for loyal employees like myself fueled our determination. We realized that silence was no longer an option. We formed a small, core organizing committee comprised of Sarah, myself, Mark, my former colleague, and a few other brave individuals. We met in secret, often late into the night, planning every detail with meticulous care. Our first step was to contact a local labor rights advocate, Maria Rodriguez, who had a reputation for fighting for workers' rights. Maria was a formidable woman, experienced in grassroots organizing, and she immediately understood the gravity of our situation. Maria advised us on legal parameters, how to ensure our protest was peaceful and effective, and how to maximize media attention. She emphasized the importance of a clear message: fairness, respect, and dignity for all Apex employees. We created flyers, drafted press releases, and utilized encrypted messaging apps to communicate with a growing network of supporters. Word spread quickly, not just among current and former Apex employees, but also within the wider community. Many community members, who had friends or family working at Apex, expressed their support. They recognized the company's importance to the local economy, but also understood the moral imperative to stand against injustice. The local union, though not directly involved with Apex's non-unionized workforce, offered logistical support and advice. They saw our protest as a broader fight for workers' rights, one that could set an important precedent. My role became that of a reluctant figurehead. My story, with its 3 decades of service ending in such an abrupt dismissal, resonated deeply with people. I became the face of the protest, a symbol of the injustice we were fighting. The fear was still present, a constant companion. The thought of facing Mr. Thorne and the company's powerful legal team was intimidating. But the solidarity I felt from my colleagues and the community outweighed my apprehension. Sarah, in particular, was a beacon of strength. Despite her own precarious position at Apex, she worked tirelessly, mobilizing her peers and ensuring our message was heard. Her courage inspired me every single day. We chose a date and time for the protest, the following Monday morning, right outside Apex Solutions' main entrance. It was a strategic choice, designed to coincide with the start of the work week and maximize visibility. As the day approached, a nervous energy filled our meetings. We reviewed our chants, practiced our speeches, and prepared our signs. We were ready to make our voices heard, to demand accountability, and to fight for dignity. This was no longer just about my job. It was about reclaiming the values of fairness and respect that had been eroded. It was about showing that a company's success should not come at the expense of its people. The morning of the protest dawned crisp and clear, a perfect backdrop for our collective stand. A mix of trepidation and fierce determination coursed through me as I arrived at Apex Solutions' main entrance. The air crackled with anticipation. Dozens of people had already gathered, holding signs with slogans like 30 years deserves respect, people over profits, and justice for Eleanor. It wasn't just former employees. Current Apex staff, community members, and even some local business owners stood in solidarity. Sarah was there, her face a mask of resolve, handing out more signs. Mark stood beside her, his presence a quiet strength. Maria Rodriguez, our advocate, moved through the crowd, offering words of encouragement and ensuring everything ran smoothly. As more people arrived, The crowd swelled, forming a vibrant sea of defiance against the corporate facade of Apex Solutions. The sheer number of people, all united for a common cause, was incredibly empowering. We began with chants, our voices rising in unison, echoing through the quiet suburban morning. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. Each chant felt like a release, a collective roar against years of unspoken grievances. Local news vans pulled up, cameras flashing, microphones extended. Our story, once confined to whispers, was now being broadcast to the entire region. This was exactly what we had hoped for, visibility and public awareness. I stepped forward to speak, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. I recounted my 3 decades of service, the abrupt dismissal, and the broader pattern of inequality at Apex. I spoke not just for myself, but for every employee who had been wronged. This isn't just about my job, I declared, my voice ringing out clearly. This is about respect. This is about dignity. This is about ensuring that no one else suffers the same fate, that loyalty is valued, and that justice prevails. The crowd cheered, their support a powerful affirmation. Other speakers followed, sharing their own experiences of discrimination, ageism, and unfair treatment at Apex. Each testimony added another layer to the collective grievance. Inside the Apex building, I could see employees peering through the windows, some with expressions of support, others perhaps with fear. Mr. Thorne's office blinds remained drawn, a stark symbol of his detachment. The protest continued for hours, a steady stream of chants, speeches, and shared stories. The energy never waned, fueled by a shared sense of purpose and the growing realization that we were not alone. The police arrived, but their presence was minimal, simply observing. Our protest was peaceful, organized, and clearly within our rights. We were not there to cause trouble, but to demand accountability. As the day progressed, the local news channels ran live reports showing the sheer scale of the protest. Social media was abuzz, with hashtag Justice for Eleanor and hashtag Apex Protest trending, drawing national attention to our cause. The collective strength of the community was overwhelming. Neighbors brought us water and snacks, local businesses displayed signs of support, and strangers stopped to offer words of encouragement. We were a united front. By late afternoon, a representative from Apex Solutions finally emerged, looking visibly uncomfortable. He announced that Mr. Thorne had agreed to meet with a delegation of protest leaders to discuss our demands. It was a small victory, but a significant one. Our voices had been heard. Our collective action had forced the company to acknowledge our presence and our grievances. The day of reckoning had begun. The meeting with Apex Solutions Management, led by Mr. Thorne, was tense. Maria Rodriguez, Sarah, Mark, and I sat across the table from them, the weight of the protest outside still palpable in the room. Mr. Thorne, looking visibly irritated, began by expressing his disappointment at the public display. Maria quickly countered, stating that the protest was a direct result of the company's discriminatory practices and disregard for its long-term employees. We presented our demands: my reinstatement with full back pay, a comprehensive review of Apex's HR policies regarding age and diversity, and the establishment of an independent committee to address employee grievances. Mr. Thorne initially scoffed at the idea of my reinstatement, reiterating his stance on agility. However, Maria presented compelling evidence of the public backlash, the negative media coverage, and the potential damage to Apex's reputation and stock value. The company's legal team, clearly unprepared for the scale and organization of our protest, seemed to be scrambling. They tried to downplay the issues, but the sheer volume of testimony and public support was undeniable. We also highlighted the broader issue of systemic inequality within Apex, citing specific examples of overlooked promotions for qualified minority candidates and the subtle ageism that had led to the sidelining of older employees. The negotiations were grueling, stretching over several days. Mr. Thorne was stubborn, but the sustained pressure from the protest, the ongoing media scrutiny, and the threat of further legal action slowly began to wear him down. Employees continued to show solidarity, some even staging small, quiet acts of defiance within the office, like wearing Justice for Eleanor pins. The internal pressure on management was mounting. Finally, after intense back and forth, Apex Solutions agreed to a settlement. It wasn't everything we asked for, but it was a significant step towards justice and a testament to the power of collective action. I would be reinstated, not in my old role, but in a newly created position focused on employee relations and legacy programs, with a substantial compensation package. This was a strategic move by Apex to save face, but it gave me a platform. More importantly, Apex committed to an independent audit of its HR policies with a focus on age and diversity discrimination. They also agreed to establish a new, confidential grievance process overseen by an external ombudsman. The company also issued a public statement acknowledging the concerns raised by current and former employees and pledging to foster a more inclusive and respectful workplace culture. It was a carefully worded statement, but it was an admission. The protest had forced Apex to confront its internal issues publicly. It was a difficult, exhausting battle, but we had achieved tangible changes that would benefit not just me, but countless other employees. The road to true change would be long, requiring constant vigilance and continued advocacy. But we had cracked the corporate facade, proving that collective action could indeed hold powerful institutions accountable. My return to Apex Solutions was met with a mix of emotions. There was relief, vindication, but also a quiet determination to ensure the changes promised were actually implemented. My new role as Director of Employee Relations and Legacy Programs was a direct result of our protest. It wasn't just a symbolic title, it was a mandate to advocate for employees, to ensure fairness, and to bridge the gap between management and staff. I worked closely with the external ombudsman, reviewing grievances and proposing policy changes. The independent HR audit revealed systemic issues, particularly in promotion pathways and compensation for women and minority employees. Apex was forced to implement new training programs and revise its hiring and promotion criteria. Mr. Thorne, though still CEO, was visibly chastened. The public outcry and the internal pressure had forced him to acknowledge the human element of his workforce. While he remained a corporate leader, his approach became noticeably more empathetic. Sarah was promoted to a team lead position, a recognition of her talent and her courage during the protest. She became a key ally in my new role, helping to foster a more inclusive environment from within. The new grievance process provided a safe space for employees to voice their concerns without fear of retaliation. It led to several internal investigations and, in some cases, disciplinary actions against managers who had perpetuated discriminatory practices. Apex Solutions slowly began to transform. It was a gradual process, not an overnight miracle, but the culture shifted. There was a renewed emphasis on mentorship, diversity, and valuing the experience of all employees, regardless of age or background. My going-away party, which had been so cruelly canceled, was eventually rescheduled, though in a much different context. It became a celebration not just of my career, but of the collective victory we had achieved. It was an emotional event, filled with genuine appreciation and a sense of shared accomplishment. I saw familiar faces, many of whom had stood with me during the protest, their eyes reflecting pride and hope. I spoke about the journey, the pain of dismissal, the power of collective action, and the importance of never giving up on what is right. I emphasized that true change comes from speaking truth to power together. Apex, once a symbol of corporate indifference, was slowly becoming a model for how companies could address systemic issues and foster a truly equitable workplace. Our protest had ignited a necessary conversation and spurred meaningful action. My personal journey had come full circle. From being dismissed and devalued, I was now in a position to shape the future of Apex, ensuring that no one else would suffer the same fate I had. The experience taught me that while individual resilience is important, true power lies in collective action. When people unite against injustice, their voices become a formidable force that even the most powerful institutions cannot ignore. Eleanor Vance, once just an employee, had become a catalyst for change. My story, born from betrayal, had blossomed into a testament to the enduring spirit of justice and the transformative power of unity.